Imagine this. The person who has walked beside you for half your life, the one who knows every habit, every triumph, every fear, suddenly lying still beneath hospital lights that flicker like distant stars. Machines hum and beep with clinical indifference, measuring the fragile line between staying and slipping away. This wasn't a scene from one of Mira Lane's dramatic films, nor a moment crafted for an audience. It was her real life, fractured, unfamiliar, slipping. Her husband, Jonas Hale, a man known for his boundless energy and unstoppable optimism, had been rushed to the ICU after a sudden health crisis that arrived without warning. One minute they were discussing weekend plans, and the next she was gripping the door handle of an ambulance, her heart pounding in disbelief. I kept thinking, this can't be real, she later admitted. We were laughing 10 minutes earlier. How does the world change that fast? Jonas could barely speak when they arrived, but he managed a trembling whisper. Call the kids, please. Not because he feared the pain, not because he needed comfort, but because, in his fading clarity, he needed to say something only a parent fully understands. The kind of truth you share when you're unsure you'll have a tomorrow to speak it again. Mira was torn. Their 3 children were scattered across cities and states, living the lives she had always encouraged them to chase: careers, degrees, adventures. Should she pull them from all that to face something so terrifying, or should she protect them from the shock? Love answered that question for her. Within hours, all 3 children arrived, their faces pale with worry, and when they walked into that sterile ICU room, Jonas gathered the last of his strength and spoke to each of them. To his eldest, he spoke of responsibility, not as a burden but as a gift, the power to make the world kinder. To his middle child, he spoke of resilience, how life bends but doesn't break you unless you let it. To his youngest, he whispered about joy, how laughter is not small or silly, but a light you carry into dark rooms. Mira stood beside the bed, holding her breath, as if any sound she made might steal a drop of the strength he was pouring into those moments. What devastated her most wasn't his weakness. It was the quiet acceptance in his eyes, the look of a man who wondered if this might truly be goodbye. In the days that followed, Mira lived in the stale coffee haze of waiting rooms, surrounded by worried strangers, wilted flowers, and vending machine candy wrappers. The nights were worse. Hours of imagining life without him, the hollow future of empty chairs and half-finished dreams. But she discovered something during those sleepless nights. An odd, painful truth. Every family eventually faces a moment like this. Maybe not in a hospital, maybe not with monitors and sterile gowns, but there always comes a time when love and fear collide and the world demands that we speak the words we often delay. From that realization grew a message she later shared with her friends and followers. Say what matters now. Love loudly. Forgive quickly. Never wait for the perfect moment to choose kindness. Miraculously, Jonas began to stabilize. His breathing eased, his color returned. The doctors delivered cautious optimism, like offering fragile glass. But improvement is not the same as victory. A new battle began: recovery. And recovery, Mira learned, can be as frightening as the illness itself. When Jonas was finally able to attempt standing, with a physical therapist on one side and Mira on the other, frustration twisted across his face. A man who once ran marathons now struggled to lift his own weight. He gripped the rails until his knuckles blanched, his breath rasped, his legs trembled. Mira instinctively reached out, but he shook his head. He needed to do this himself. It took nearly 5 minutes to travel 3 feet from bed to chair. When he finally sat down, exhausted but victorious, he gave her a tired smile unlike any he'd ever worn on a red carpet or a stage. A smile built from grit, not glamour. Tiny steps, he whispered. For the next 3 months, that became their mantra. When Jonas was discharged, Mira drove home at a snail's pace, glancing back every few seconds to make sure he was okay. The house felt different now. Too quiet, too soft, too fragile. There were no monitors, no nurses, no safety nets. Everything depended on them. The man who had always been the anchor of the family suddenly needed help with the smallest tasks. Asking for water, standing up, climbing the stairs. It ate at him, and Mira's nerves, already worn thin, sometimes snapped under the weight of watching someone they adored struggle so deeply. Recovery wasn't cinematic. It wasn't inspirational montages and triumphant music. It was messy. It was slow. It was full of fear. And yet, love grew in those cracks. 2 weeks after returning home, Jonas suffered a setback from trying too much too soon. Mira found him sitting in the living room, staring out at the garden, shoulders slumped, eyes dim. For once, she didn't try to cheer him up. She didn't crack jokes. She simply sat. Silence, as it turned out, can be more comforting than words. Eventually, he spoke. When I was lying in that hospital bed, I didn't think about our house or the bills or my schedule. All I thought was, I wish we had taken more slow mornings, more walks, more nothing. Mira felt the truth of it sink into her bones. That night became a turning point, not just in his recovery, but in their entire life. They began cutting away the unnecessary, long meetings, obligations disguised as opportunities, social events that drained more than they filled. They started saying no more often and yes to each other. Their home changed. Their routine changed. They changed. When Jonas eventually returned to work, his coworkers noticed the shift immediately. His humor was softer, not showy. His gratitude pulled people closer. The way he looked at Mira with a quiet awe didn't go unnoticed. Their friends called it new chemistry, but it wasn't new. It was simply unmasked, the raw version that only surfaces when you've held someone's hand at the edge of losing everything. Months later, Jonas was strong again, not the same as before, maybe softer in some ways, but deeper in others. And their family, altered by the brush with loss, walked forward differently, not rushing, not postponing joy, not waiting for better timing, just living, fully, deliberately, thankfully. Because once you've waited for a loved one to wake up in a room of humming machines, nothing about life feels ordinary ever again.